Welcome back, Riding Cars. I'm actually going to talk about boats. It does relate to cars. It does relate to cars. I'm going to tell my little boat story, I guess. So, later in life, I was diagnosed type 1 diabetic. And at the time, my hobby was backpacking. I was on Vancouver Island, and I had chosen this as my hobby sort of thing, because all kinds of hiking, all kinds of the best hiking in the world is on Vancouver Island. Not necessarily backcountry or anything like that, but backpacking, they have well-known trails. One is the Juan de Fuca, the other one is the West Coast Trail. So after arriving on Vancouver Island, gearing up for backpacking, I wanted to do the West Coast Trail. This has to do with boats, just stick with me for a bit. And it has to do with cars. It all ties in together, trust me. Okay, so I wanted to do the West Coast Trail. So to get into shape and of the new environment that Vancouver Island is, I did a trip to the Juan de Fuca, and just to see what it's like backpacking on Vancouver Island in order to do this West Coast Trail. See what I needed to do in order to be fit and healthy enough, because the West Coast Trail is a grueling trail. It's one of the hardest in the world. It's in the top 10 of blah blah blah. So I did the Juan de Fuca, and I was like, okay, I know what I got to do. I'll do it. I did it. I got in shape. I had the gear. Got everything dialed in. My pack weight, my food, the whole thing. I knew exactly what to do, and I was just waiting to buy a ticket for this next year that I was planning to do the West Coast Trail, and tickets usually became available, and I was going to buy a ticket in the summertime to go and do the West Coast Trail. But I got sick. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which was a super surprise to everybody. So instead of doing the West Coast Trail that year, after I got sick, I had to test again. I had to see how well I was out there with this new diagnosis and doing insulin and things like that. So I did the Juan de Fuca again to learn what I needed to do in order to be on the West Coast Trail sort of thing, right? And I did it, and I did the Juan de Fuca again, and I did it as a type 1 diabetic again. Well, again, for the first time, and decided that I needed somebody to be with me to do this backcountry backpacking stuff, right? I couldn't do it alone. And there was nobody who kind of knew me, and I really didn't want to teach this to somebody, how to manage type 1 diabetes out on a trail, so I kind of gave up on that. So I picked a new hobby, and the hobby was going to be fishing. This is where cars come in. Growing up as a young guy, I did get into fishing with a buddy, and the only reason that we really ended up fishing as a hobby, he got into it. I had been fishing but I never was fishing on my own. I would always fish with my dad, my family, or whatever, right? Somebody would have a boat, we'd do a fishing trip together, sort of thing. But with him, both me and him, both of us always had money, and both of us always had a vehicle. So we always ended up doing things together. And it was outdoor. He was outdoorsy or whatever. We did mountain biking for a while. But bikes are, you can't take bikes places. You have, you need bike racks and things like that. We weren't that into it. We just liked riding bikes, sort of thing. So we got into fishing. And because you could just throw your fishing rod and a tackle box and a lunch in the car and go drive somewhere and fish. And we were into cars too. He would always build, tune cars and things like that. Give him important to me to try out and stuff. But we would always, he'd call me up and say, hey, and he could always do this. Hey, you want to do this? And I'd be like, yeah, sure, let's go do it. Because I always had a car, I always had money, right? And we would do that. And if it didn't work out at this lake, we'd drive and go to a different lake, or we'd go to a different spot. Or we'd go, let's try this river, and then we would hike along the river. So, it was kind of this, this hiking / car driving experience for this hobby called fishing. And it was convenient. Fishing was convenient for us. So I ended up just keeping a fishing rod and my tackle box and stuff in my cars. Before getting married and having children and all that, right? Because at any time, I would just pull off to the side of something, because lots of lakes and things where I live, and I would just do it. Now, I got back into this hobby after deciding backpacking probably wasn't the best health choice for me long term. And I thought, okay, I'll pick fishing, because I'll just do that again. I'll throw the fishing pole in the trunk. And then there were tons of trout lakes around. I picked trout fishing or freshwater fishing on the island. I didn't want to do the ocean fishing. You needed all kinds of weird gear and giant boats and things like that in order to do the fishing. And that's what I thought. I'll just do the same thing I did when I was a young guy and pull off to lakes and just... Because I'm not looking for big fish. I'm not looking to feed my family. I'm not looking for, trophy fishing or anything like that. It's a way for me to get close to nature without getting lost in the back 40 somewhere or having to call search and rescue because I'm having a diabetic episode in the middle of nowhere. There's a dock, there's the shoreline, and just do some casting, maybe catch some fish and have a good time, and that's it. So I was kind of against a boat. I was always against a boat because whenever I saw people with boats, they were never fishing. They would have to make some big... It was always a big deal to go fishing. Because now we got to get the boat out, we got to get the boat ready, then you do the fishing on the boat, and then you got to clean the boat, and then you get the boat home, and then you got to drain the boat, and then you got to whatever. The boat thing is a production, so much of a production that because you have a boat and you're designating it only for fishing, that you never take the boat out. Because it's such a big deal. And when you do take the boat out, this is what I noticed with all these fishermen. Because they had to wait so long in order to get this boat out to go do this fishing thing. Because the boat thing is a big production. It was a drunk fest. Yeah, you go do some fishing, but everybody's out there, you're partying for the day, basically, on a boat. So when and the other thing is that I always see boats parked. I walk around my neighborhood and everybody has these big ocean boats to go fishing, but they were never out there fishing. Sorry, this camper van's all over the road. I'm watching it. I'm glad I'm behind it. He almost ran into this guy, passing him. Anyway, so... But there was this thing about insisting that we get a boat. It's still freshwater, and so we got a John boat. But okay, this was my idea though. Before starting, as soon as it's like fishing, I was like, I still want to be able to, whatever vehicle I'm in. Because this is the other thing with those big boats. You got to have a vehicle to tow a boat, a trailer, and all of this. And I ran into this problem with buying a vehicle, and I've told stories about it when buying this Hornet. The car that I'm driving now. But at the time I was driving a BMW 3 Series, which was a perfect little island car. And I thought, I'll just keep the car, and what I'll do is, I think what I'm going to do, if I'm picking fishing as a hobby, I'm going to keep my poles and my tackle box in the trunk of the car. And I want to be able to, if I want to get out on the lake, because all the lakes were small. And I've seen people fishing on these lakes in boats, but mostly in small things like little pontoon boats, little John boats, little rowboats, and those dinghy things that you wear, you know, and you paddle with your feet to go out in the lake and stuff like that. I saw a lot of that, and that appealed to me. So when it came time for fishing, you know, pick a hobby, and I was looking for one of those pontoon things, or something light enough. Dead moose. Somebody killed it. Something that I could, you know, if I bought a roof rack for my BMW to throw this lightweight boat, and I saw this all over on the island. This was common. Every time that we went to a lake with our new boat that we got, that was happening. That was a normal thing. You know, guys would go fishing with their fishing kayaks. Guys would go fishing with their little pontoon boats that they would actually take off the roof and then blow up on the side of the rubber dinghies. They would, you know, or electric motor they'd put on it. You know, where you didn't need a trailer. You know, a dedicated boat trailer and a dedicated pulling vehicle. Okay. So we found this John boat, and thought, okay. The BMW, nobody wanted me going on my own. I had to get something for, you know, to take 2 or 3 people or whatever. The idea is I was going to fish with my dad, and we'd have this hobby into his retirement together. So I bought a John boat, and for the first little while we were renting a U-Haul truck. We would throw it in the back of the truck and drive it up to the boat launch, toss it out. It was easy, it was simple, it was so convenient. It was so convenient, except for the fact that we had to go rent the truck. So if we would have had a truck, this whole John boat thing, perfect. Except truck prices. Finding a used truck is expensive. They're expensive. You basically have to finance it unless you're buying a beater, and nobody's going to buy a beater. As you know, I don't know. I looked into it anyway. Buying a decent truck used, you still have to finance. Buying a new truck was, people are, you know, the car companies are out to lunch with the truck prices. Then it became, well, I got to get a trailer to pull this little, because I can't put it on the roof of the BMW. It was just not practical. So we just got this little utility trailer. I made a video about it. You've seen it. If you haven't seen it, there's a video of it. I'll probably do more videos of it. But it wasn't a dedicated boat trailer. It was something that we could use to tow around, whatever. But the problem was that I had a BMW. And putting a hitch on it to pull the trailer would have been doable, but not quite practical. Because I think the BMW's towing capacity was like 600 pounds or something like that, which would have pulled the boat. And I did see people around the island doing that kind of stuff with their little cars and a little trailer, but not pulling a boat, but, you know, like a little garden trailer, pulling dirt and stuff like that, because they don't have a truck. The trucks really didn't fit on the island, a full-size truck. They didn't fit in parking space. Like, you couldn't be your daily driver. So I ended up going, okay, well, I need a new vehicle. And by this time, we were realizing we were moving to Alberta. So I started looking for a truck. And I quickly found out that trucks are out of reach for me. And I really didn't want one as a full-size truck as a daily driver, because I don't use it for that kind of thing. It would just be for the boat and the odd bit of once a year gardening supply things that we would do. I'm not running a business that requires a truck or anything like that. So I thought, okay, a small truck. I was hoping for a Ranger. But there was never one available for me to go buy. Not on the island. So I ended up, okay, well, maybe an SUV. We'll pull the trailer with the SUV, and that'll be it. And that's how I ended up with the Hornet, and the whole decision behind that. It fit the rating capacity of the trailer. It fit a whole bunch of things. So now that I have a boat, I never use it. Never go fishing in the boat. Back on the island, when we were renting the truck to take the John boat out, it was a big deal. I mean, we'd have to, it was about $100 a day for the truck. Well, not really. It was cheaper than that. But it was a production, because, well, we had to schedule a day. We had to make sure the truck was available. Then we would have to go pick up the truck. Then we would have to go get the boat. Then we would go fishing, and then we would have to return the truck by the end of the day. And now that I got a boat that requires a trailer to get around and go fishing, I never use it. It sits in the yard. To pick a day to go fishing is like, it's a production. Like, it's a big deal. Like, I can't say, oh, I'm just gonna go fishing. Let's go fishing. We got a lake like 5 minutes from our house, with the boat launch like 5 minutes away, or 10 minutes away, let's say 10 minutes away. And I went out there once with my daughter. Like, it took us a while to figure out where all of this stuff is, out where we are now, where these boat launches are, which lakes actually have fish and don't have fish, and then finding out where to launch a boat, it took a long time. But we did find one that was conveniently located just down the road from our house. Earlier this year, I had to plan a day, so let's go fishing, me and my daughter, and I took her out fishing, and we had a great time. But in doing the process with the boat, I was like, you know what, this is not convenient. This is why people who have boats on trailers never go fishing with them. And when you do see them out on the lake, it's a drunk fest, because they finally got to do it. They got to plan a whole day around it, Whereas I keep a fishing pole and fishing gear in my car. This is my fishing vehicle. On my way to work, all of my part-time jobs, on the way to work, I can go fishing. There's a trout pond by my main part-time job that I actually am not working at soon. But there's a trout pond there, literally like 3 minutes from my job, and I pull over there every morning, well, almost every morning, when I'm working in that town. I go fish in that fish pond, not to catch it. I just go fishing. I'm out in nature, watch the ducks, things like that. The other job I had, there's a lake. It's a little bit out of the way, 15 minutes or so out of the way, but I wake up early enough where I can go 15 minutes out of my way, do a half an hour of casting out in the water, catch some fish, go to work. Not a big deal. Today, I'm going out to this other job. I just left the lake. it's on my way to work. Literally, the boat launch where I can fish is on my way to my job, and it's a 2-minute detour. Boom. Pull up, stand at the end of the dock, throw some things in the water for a while, catch some fish, put them back, get in my car, on my way to work again. Half an hour, 45, an hour before, like, it's convenient. So I keep on, this is a fishing car. Every car I own is a fishing car. Right? But with a boat and a trailer, I specifically had to find a car that would take a tow hitch and be able to pull the trailer with a boat on it. And now that you like the thing with the boat, you have to have a specific pulling vehicle. It's the same thing with an RV or a camping trailer. You got to have a pulling vehicle. That's why I chose backpacking, because I could just throw a backpack in the trunk of a car, and then I could just pull over at a trail and go for a walk for an hour or two, come back to my car, and continue on my day. I didn't have to plan a whole big production, week-long trail thing to get out to see nature. I could do it to and from work every day. I could see it every day. It's the same thing with fishing. I could do it every day without a boat. I do more fishing without a boat than having the boat, than having a fishing boat. And it could be, I don't know, it could be convenient, because I could really haul the boat to work if I really wanted to. But then you're hauling a boat around everywhere. Then it's parked in somebody's parking it and the whole thing. Like, it's just not feasible. At my other job there, I could. This job here, I could. I could actually put a boat in, because where I park my car, it's safe, it's secure. Where I could in the other job there, where I do the trout lake, the trout pond is small. It'd be fun to take the boat in there, but it's really small. But it would be fun to do it, and I would have a place to park. My boat and stuff would be safe. Going into the other place there, where the fishing thing is a 15-20 minute detour, it's not safe. Like, I couldn't take the boat there, right? But driving around with the boat all day, which is why I kind of wanted, when I originally thought fishing as a hobby, to be that mobile in the vehicle. I thought, it's an SUV, I'll have a bigger, more trunk space than my BMW, sort of thing, even though the trunk was huge in the BMW. But to be able to go, hey, I'll just throw in that pontoon thingy and blow it up when I get to a lake, and then just go out for an hour and deflate everything, and then continue on my way. Normal day. And then I got to go out fishing, I got to see nature. I didn't have to plan a big thing. It wasn't a great big ordeal. And I found, even though it's a small boat, like, maybe, yes, if I had a truck, it would be far more convenient for me to be towing around a boat. And I did see that on the island, and I do see that here every now and again. Out here, not many people own small boat things. Everybody's into the big boat things on the lakes and things like that, right? But there are a few small boat guys that I meet at these boat launches where it is in the trunk of their car. Those rib boats. Blow up dinghies. I was fishing at that one place with the 20-minute detour, 15-minute detour. I watched him at the boat launch. He sat there and he blowed up his dinghy, and he rowed out to meet a buddy in another boat. They went fishing together. But having a boat that requires a trailer means you don't go fishing in the boat. It means it sits most of the year, and 2 or 3 times you might go fishing. The boat becomes the hobby. It's not the fishing. Because the boat's sitting in your yard, you end up working on it because it's not on the lake and you're not fishing in it.